Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl Soule, and for the next half hour or so, I'm going to be talking a bit about a new application that is now a 1.0 first release application. Now, you may have seen this before. We have been showing Adobe Character Animator in an open beta for the last year, in fact, year and a half, I believe. And the interesting thing about offering this in an open beta is it's really given us a lot of feedback from customers like yourselves on what they are looking for in a tool to create characters, animated characters from two-dimensional artwork. Now, if you haven't seen Character Animator before, I start inside of something like Photoshop or Illustrator, and I can create artwork, bring that artwork over into Character Animator, and if I have named the layers correctly inside of my Photoshop file or my Illustrator file, that artwork will automatically become rigged, and I can use it to do character animation. So this can take any piece of artwork drawn in Illustrator or in Photoshop and turn it into an animated character that can be used live for broadcast. It can be recorded. It's integrated with Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects if you need to do more fine-tuned tweaking of your recordings. It can also be used for live streaming. We see people using Character Animator on places like Twitch, places like Facebook, where fans can interact with animated characters live and in real time. So I'm going to get started with this puppet that I have here. This is a very simple puppet, just kind of a blank face. And in order to start using this as a live character, I'm going to come over to my camera panel here and just turn on my camera. Now, when I turn on my camera, I'm going to need to set a rest pose so that Character Animator knows what my face looks like. And now we have something very, very scary. So, what is this doing? Well, now you can see my eyes, my eyebrows are now being locked to the animation and tracking with my face. If I now come in and turn on my microphone, the mouth shape will actually change ooh, ah, to whatever sounds that I happen to be making. So we actually have a phoneme detector built into Character Animator. This is part of our machine learning initiative at Adobe. We have technology called Adobe Sensei, and Sensei is a machine learning set of algorithms that actually drives things just like what you see here with sound phoneme detection. So the mouth motion is not dependent upon language. This will work with English, it will work with Dutch, it will work with Japanese. Really, this is looking for specific sounds. Now, just to show that this is a Photoshop file, this is a live piece of artwork. If I go back into my rigging here and choose Edit Original, this will take me into the PSD file that this face is based on. So you can see here are the various layers for the artwork. I can stretch this out a little bit. You can see that I have a layer for the head, a layer for the eyes, and so these are grouped together in such a way that it builds the artwork layer by layer. And for the mouth, we actually have 13 different shapes that are based on specific sounds, and so those sounds are matched up with the sounds that my mouth is saying. If I want to make a change to this artwork, I can go ahead and select the face and go into the shape that makes up the face, and maybe I want to give this more of an orange, reddish orange face. So I'll change the color here, hit save, switch back over to Character Animator. Did I save? Let me save. Save, there we go. There we go. And now when I switch over here, we now have a red face character interacting with the orange background. Now, there's a lot of new features that we're starting to add dealing with fine-tuning and tweaking the animation. One of the first things is just dealing with the eyebrows. Right now, the eyebrows are just going up and down. The human eyes typically don't do that. You want to put expression and emotion into the eyeballs. So I can actually use these new parameters here for raised eyebrow and lowered eyebrow tilt. So if I start to modify these, let me just go to my timeline, make sure I've got my face selected. I can go in here and change the raised eyebrow tilt. So now my eyebrows are a little bit more expressive, makes me look a little bit worried. Oh, I don't know if people here like this demo. Oh, now if I want to go the other direction, I could do a lowered eyebrow tilt, and now you can see my angry face. I'm kind of angry now. Let's go a little bit further. Arr. Oh, that's too far. So you can see this by just playing with the eyebrow tilt level, we can have, you know, kind of a worried face and kind of an angry face. So another thing that we've also played with adding new properties. So again, these are all optional just so you can get the look of the character that you want. One of the things about the eyes right now is they track in real time with my eyes. If I look to this side, my eyes will track. If I look over here, the eyes will track. But this is a little bit different from traditional animation. Normally animated eyes kind of, they jump from position to position. So we've added something new called snap eye gaze. If I turn that on, my eyes will continue to look in one direction. They don't float around, but they will start to look in different ways. So I'm just going to go ahead and set a rest pose kind of looking slightly down here. And so now when I look up at the camera, my eyes look up. If I look over here, I have to hold a position to make my eyes look in a given direction. So by doing this, snap eye gaze, it's just a new added function for animation. Now I mentioned Character Animator can do live work for streaming, but it's also a great tool for recording characters, recording voice and motion. Every one of the items listed over on this side has either a clear dot or a red dot next to it. So I can arm recording and do recording on a character basis. I can do multiple passes. Maybe the first pass through I want to get the eye motion correct. The next pass I want to get the mouth motion correct. Then the third pass, maybe I want to make my head bounce around in an appropriate way. We can do multiple pass recordings by arming different properties within the properties panel here. Now I'm going to do a quick recording here for everybody. Let me reset my rest pose so I can look into the camera. And we'll just do a very quick recording here. Well, hello. I'm a big giant talking, and it's not working. Why is it not working? Do I have the wrong layer selected? Let's see, set rest pose. I'm in my record mode. I've got this armed. Sometimes I forget to arm certain layers here, so we'll just make sure that, yeah, eye gaze is recording, camera input is recording. Okay, let's try this one more time. We'll just go back to the beginning. Make sure this is armed for recording. That looks good. Twirl down, no extra layers there, and go. Oh, hey. Hey, how's it going out there? I'm recording right now. Can you see? I'm gonna get closer. Closer, closer. Okay, that's enough recording. Now what I have done here, you can see, here is my recorded take. We now have nice audio waveforms, so I can instantly scrub right to the beginning of my recording. Closer, closer. I can also see the various takes, so we have systems in place to blend various takes together. More importantly though, if I'm adjusting and playing with the audio, if I kind of zoom in here, you'll be able to see all of the individual mouth shapes when they were selected by the machine learning algorithm in Character Animator, by the Adobe Sensei technology. So I can come in here if I want to change these. I have the ability to modify these shapes on a moment-by-moment basis, and I can line this up perfectly with my dialogue track. So it's possible to achieve 100% sync between mouth motion and the recording to make sure that the puppet is doing exactly what you want it to do. Okay, I've been doing all of this with a big floating head. This is kind of a very simple example. We're going to take things up a notch. I'm going to switch over to a different puppet. We're going to move to Chloe here. Now, Chloe is actually one of the characters that you can use directly inside of Character Animator the first time you launch it. This start screen has a whole series of different template puppets, video tutorials, and a full interactive cartoon that you can actually use to get started. I've had some very high-profile people just open up this interactive tutorial and get started using Character Animator. It will teach you how to use the program just by watching the tutorials. It's really that simple. So if I'm using Chloe here, let's just go ahead and go into this scene. So here, Chloe is a little bit more complex as a puppet. We've got some physics being applied, so you can see Chloe's hair kind of bounces around in the background. Chloe has arms that can be bent and moved around. She's even got some keyboard shortcuts that I can use to change out her hand gestures here. You know, I can flip the wrist around here so that Chloe can kind of wave at everybody. Some of the things that I want to show you about Chloe, first off, we've improved on the way character rigging can happen within Character Animator. In the past, this was one of the more complex aspects of some of the beta versions of Character Animator. It had to do with creating these blank layers in Photoshop, origin points, or using something called the stapler to kind of staple layers together. Now I have the ability to just take and add points and say, you know what, I want to attach this arm here, and just by doing that, I now have the arm shape is appropriately attached to the base puppet. So when the arm moves, it will move appropriately. So some new features in here as far as working with origin points and being able to link up characters. So now I can do the same kind of motion with the left arm that I had with the right arm. Another thing that we can do in Character Animator is work with triggers. You saw me changing out the hand shapes. This is actually done using multiple layers of artwork. So in this situation, the hands, I can see that the left hand has been assigned keyboard shortcuts to switch between different pieces of artwork. So if I turn off the default art and turn on a different piece of art, you can see her hand actually changes and updates over here as I'm switching between these different layers. So once I have different pieces of artwork, I can do this for things like hands, feet. I can also do this for different positions and poses for the head. Character Animator is a 2D piece of, it generates 2D characters, but there are some ways you can have characters turning from side to side by generating a left view, a 3/4 view, a forward view, a right 3/4, and a right view. We can actually tie all of that together using this tagging panel over here on the side. We can actually designate artwork as different bits and pieces over here. If you name your layers according to the templates in Photoshop or Illustrator, things are tagged automatically, but the tagging panel gives me a lot more options for kind of re-tagging artwork. If I didn't tag this as an arm, I could go back in and fix this. Character Animator also now supports walk cycles, so by tagging the legs and the feet, we can automatically add things like walking behaviors inside of Character Animator. Now, one new feature that we've added, if I have a group of layers like these hands, and I want to now make these have triggers associated with them that I can swap them out, all I have to do now, this new triggers panel makes it super easy. I can just take the top level here, the hands, and drag it and drop it over here in the triggers panel. And by doing that, I could come in and just assign this as keyboard number 7. We'll assign this as number 8. We'll assign that as number 9. And I think I'll make number 9. I think I'm also going to turn on something called latch. Latch means it'll swap and stay swapped out until I press that key a second time. So it gives me a way of swapping out the hand shape. Another thing you'll also note here is I have the ability to assign these to MIDI notes. Now, for those of you who only know MIDI as something for music, it stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's been around for many, many, many years. There are a lot of control surfaces that use MIDI. And by using MIDI controls, you can add many, many more keyboard commands than what I have here. And you can also make them much more interactive. There are some different panels that DJs use that have these giant large buttons that you can push and assign to different MIDI sounds. By assigning MIDI notes to your triggers, you can use any MIDI controller with Character Animator to have the right type of surface in front of your animator, in front of the person generating the character, so that they can fire off these different controls. If anybody saw the live segment of The Simpsons, where Homer Simpson took questions over the phone live, this was driven by Character Animator, and it was driven by a little control surface where the animator actually put big buttons with different hand gestures and different pictures of Homer to drive the animation for Homer Simpson. So that's definitely one of the potential uses that we see for this. Now, once I have these triggers are set up, I can come back over here into my record mode, and now this arm has the same type of triggers that the other arm had. So I can come in here, just go into my triggers panel, and I can see I have 7, 8, and then 9 is a latch, so I have to push it once to flip her hand around. Then I can pick her hand up and have her wave, and then drop back down again and push it again, and her hand will flip around. So I can turn the wrist that way. Now, in addition to these types of controls, we wanted to also present a visual control for these triggers. The trigger panel itself lets me build out and choose my keyboard shortcuts, but it really doesn't tell me what these are. What is the difference between point 1 and point 2? What's the difference between switch? So we now have something called a control panel. By clicking this, it will automatically go through and find anything that has a trigger, has one of these groups, and it will generate controls for me with little visual icons based on the artwork in question. So now I can see left-hand controls, right-hand controls. It also found there are some eyebrow controls. Chloe can get angry. Don't make Chloe angry. So you can see how this works from an animator's perspective. Now I can just at a glance see all of the various controls I have for my puppet. I'm going to switch over to a different puppet here to generate some more of these. This is SteveBot. SteveBot is my robot puppet here. He's very video and audio centric. In fact, SteveBot has some special commands for doing things like generating sound waves and generating a picture with his camera hand here. Now, I happen to know what those keyboard shortcuts are. I can see them over here in the triggers panel, but using the new control panel, I can click on this, and now I get these wonderful visual indicators. Oh, SteveBot's also got flashing glasses. Hey, how's it going? So I can also come over here. If I change to my layout view, I can start to pick these buttons up and sort of orient these however I want. But even more importantly, I can go into the controls here and start to grab properties. Anything in a little rounded box is something that can have a control in the control panel. So I can bring over the X position as a slider. I could bring over the rotation as a control. I could even bring over the opacity as a control here. And I can start to pick these up and kind of move them around, put the layout the way I want it here. We'll put opacity down here at the bottom. And so now I've got all the various controls that I want to work with, so I can turn things on and off as needed. We'll have SteveBot kind of start over here. He's kind of shy. Hey, check out my hair, my cable hair. So we've got a little physics effect of being applied to the hair in the back so that it bounces. Steve does his little dance. It's just too much fun. I could stay up here all day doing this. And in fact, Steve's a little shy, so we'll just fade him out. Oh, he'll come back. You can also see there are different ways of animating the mouth. SteveBot actually has, using an audio waveform set of artwork to kind of swap out and make the mouth move, which I think is also another cool way of working. You can use something called a nutcracker jaw if you don't want to draw individual shapes for the mouth. If you've ever seen characters animated on South Park where the mouth just kind of moves up and down, you can set up Character Animator to do that as well. Oh, one thing I forgot to show you, and I want to go back and show you this. Let's go back to Chloe for 1 second. One other thing that we wanted to do was provide some new ways of making the artwork look more hand-drawn. One of the things about Character Animator is, the motion is very fluid based on how I move around on the screen. And unfortunately, hand-drawn animation, nobody has the time to do that. They typically strike certain poses and focus on reusing the same artwork over multiple frames. So to create that type of style, we've introduced a new property called pose-to-pose movement. And pose-to-pose movement basically means hold a pose for a period of time and then move to the next pose. So if I turn this on, let's set this to about 50%, you can see that her hair is still reacting very naturally with the physics engine, but now she's kind of moving more static. If I add the smoothing property here, now as I move from one position to another, she kind of does a quick animation from those positions, but she's not moving quite as fluidly as before. So we can smooth this out further, maybe add a little bit more pose-to-pose motion, and now she's going to move very smoothly from position to position. But again, it adds more of an animated, a hand-drawn animation style rather than something that's being tracked via camera motion. And so again, just more flexibility to kind of create the character the way you want your character to be animated. All right, I'm going to run out of time here. I've got a couple more features to show you. One of them is dealing with something called clipping masks. Clipping masks are a cool way of kind of constraining your art to keep it within a given area on the screen. This can be very useful if you have large, really picturesque eyes and the artwork actually extends beyond the eyeball. You can add a clipping mask to keep the artwork within the visible artwork within the circle and have the eyes actually continue to move. Here I've got an example. The head is actually being used as a clipping mask. I've got more hair drawn than is visible, but as I turn my head, it gives kind of a 3D perspective of the head turning and the shadow along the side of my head here. So doing things like this make it really easy to constrain artwork. So for Stan here, let's go into Stan for a second. With Stan, I have a clipping mask applied to the head. If I take that off for a second, there you can see the entire artwork as drawn. So the hair, we've kind of peeled up the hair here. So basically this additional bit of hair, if I turn to one side or the other, it exposes part of this hair and gives his head more of a 2.5D type of an experience to kind of clean things up. Now the other thing we can also do with Stan, let me just go back into my record mode here. There are some new options dealing with handles and being able to take handles and apply them and add them to various parts of the body. What I can do is actually take, Stan's got some trigger functions dealing with his arm, which you saw. I'll go ahead and select him here. Here's the layer picker here. Now the arm can be set based on keyboard controls. I could generate a control panel for it, but wouldn't it be cool if I could actually tie Stan's arm motions with my talking words? So now I've actually, let me set some, I'll set a little bit of a percentage offset on that. So let's add about 30%. And now you can see as I'm talking, his arm is actually animating for me automatically. So we hope we can use things like layer cycles. We can actually use them in different interesting and new ways by being able to tie various layer cycles together with different properties. So I could be using the mouse, I could be using a keyboard command to step through these layers. Here I'm actually using audio input to make his arm move up and down. The last thing I'm going to show you is some of the new physics that we have built into Character Animator. We've had properties in the past, things like dangle properties and the ability to have things like wind direction. Now we have full gravity strength, and we have the ability inside of physics, we can tag items with things like collide and dynamic properties so that they're affected by things like physics, like gravity. So within the scene, you can see all of these different items are immediately affected by gravity. I can pick them up, kind of throw them around. They interact with each other in a natural fashion. And we have a chicken in this shot that explodes, because you have to have an exploding chicken in every demonstration. All right, guys, I'm out of time. Thank you guys so much. There's another great presenter coming up next.